What is up, YouTube? Welcome to the beginning of a new series. So in this one, it's going to be a training series. So I'm going to pick some movements that I enjoy doing, that I have a lot of knowledge doing. I'm going to just give you some cues, some helpful tips to just kind of look for and help to get that perfect technique. So the first exercise we're going to do to start the series off is going to be the squat. So this is definitely one of my favorite exercises. If it's not squat, it's deadlift or bench. Those are like the big three for me. So I always incorporate one of those typically in my workouts, unless I'm doing just like shoulders, then it's an overhead press. But anyways, we are going to start with just your basic squat. We'll show you some variations. I'll show you some things that could potentially make it easier if you're a beginner just learning the exercise. Maybe you don't want to jump straight into throwing a bar on your back, but at the same time, maybe just doing body weight isn't hard enough. But the big things we want to look for are what I'm going to be pointing out in this video. So we will get started. So we'll start with just your basic body weight squat.
Oh, okay. I'm nervous.
So first things first, you have to find your comfortable foot placement. Everybody's going to be a little bit different depending on their lever length. So if you tend to have like a longer femur, you might need to switch your stance a little bit. So for Stacy, she's going to just do a shoulder width foot placement, and then she's just going to go down into her squat. The first thing I'm always looking at is the feet. So I want to make sure that the feet are planted and that she's pressing through that floor and not allowing the heels to lift or the ankles to pronate. So that is going to be step number one. So we'll get you to go down. So how'd that feel?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Stacy's got a bad issue with allowing her ankles to just buckle in. So you really want to focus on keeping those ankles right in a perfect line. See, so that was much better. As well, I find a big issue for you is you always have to go as low as possible, which is fine. But at the same time, if you're caving in, then you're just reinforcing potential bad habits. So go again. Perfect. All right. So after we look at the feet, we want to kind of just slowly start to work our way up. So now we're going to look at the knees and make sure that the knees aren't buckling in. So for her, knees are perfect, following the toe line. So right over, tracking right over the feet, which is great. And then as we go up, then we're going to look at the hip hinging. So everybody's going to be a little bit different with this one. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if you're a little bit more leaning forward. It's also going to change depending on what type of load you have. So if you have a front loaded squat where you're doing a goblet squat with a kettlebell or a dumbbell, you might have a little bit more forward lean just because you're counterbalancing. But yeah, so we just want to kind of watch the hips, make sure that she's not kind of going into a good morning and then coming down. We still want it to be a nice fluid motion. So as she's coming down, try to maintain that straight vertical line as best as possible. Perfect. And then, yeah, so again, this is good. She's got a slight butt wink, but as long as, like, I have no issues with that as long as you're within control. So as long as you're controlling it, I don't see like a big issue. If you're just kind of popping down and then popping back into it, you're going to encounter some issues, and that could be a little bit harder on that, on the hips, on your glutes, on your just like lower back in general. So careful of that. And then as we go up, obviously we want to maintain that upright chest. We don't want to allow any curvature in the upper back, because then chances are you're going to pull something, tweak something, and it's just not that enjoyable. I have done it before when I've been pushing some heavy weight, and it sucks. So we'll go again. So again, we're looking at the feet, we're looking at the knees, we're looking at the hips, Then we're looking at that upper back and maintaining that neutral spine. So she's not looking up. She's not looking all the way down. She's just kind of maintaining an eyesight. So focus on a spot ahead of you and just kind of drive through that. I find this, like, if you're struggling, it's nice if you have a mirror available, because I find that makes it so much easier if you're training alone. Obviously, if you have a trainer, hopefully they're already looking through all of this. But if you're alone, a mirror is going to be key, or even taking a video from the front, take a video from the side. This could potentially help you just tweak a lot. So yeah, so that is kind of like your basic body weight squat. We'll show the barbell, because again, depending on your load is going to change how you kind of move throughout this movement. So she racks it. So she doesn't do a low bar. She does more like almost like a high bar, where it's just sitting on top of the traps there. Unrack it. With the step out, I try to do like a 1, 2, and hopefully I'm already in line. Sometimes you might have to adjust a little bit just to keep that toe line nice and even. But walkout, honestly, is huge. Like, if you can perfect your walkout, it's just going to decrease the amount of effort put in before you actually have to do your set. Before, like, I used to walk out, take like 10 steps and sit there fiddling with my feet, and then I'm exhausted by the time I actually have to do my set. Okay, so now we're going to just go down into that squat, nice and controlled. Again, looking at the feet, making sure they're not buckling in. Knees are in line with the toes. Perfect. So obviously she's done some squatting before. Now point your toes out a little bit more. So we're doing more of like a plie squat. So depending on your kind of body is shaped, you might have to just point those toes out slightly, because essentially your hip joints do not run just straight. You might have to angle out, and this is just going to relieve a lot of pressure and increase your mobility significantly. So again, nothing wrong with this. You just have to find that comfortable stance for you, and then focus on the other cues. How'd that feel? Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah. See, like, you're not a plie wide stance type of person. So you're very shoulder width. Toes typically are pretty straightforward. And then you go down into the squat. But again, you see she does lean a little bit more forward when she has the barbell on her back. And that's going to be normal, because obviously you have a load that is pushing you forward a little bit. As long as she's not doing a good morning as she's going down and completely bending in half, then I would say that that is very safe. So you can re-rack that. This is so cold. But now we are going to do a goblet squat. So I'll actually get you to just face the camera this time. So for the goblet squat, this is a front-loaded one. So same concept though, you don't want to allow your upper back to round on you because you're holding that. So a lot of people will tend to kind of hold that weight, and they'll fall forward and allow their spine to just round. Your hand's getting cold. So that's like the main focus. In terms of the rest of the movement, it's going to be very similar to your typical body weight squat or your back squat with the barbell. So as she goes down, we're tracking the ankles. Heels are good. Knees are good. Lower back looks good. And upper back is nice and straight as well. So that is like your goblet squat. So if you can't handle throwing a barbell on your back, maybe you have tight shoulders, you can't even hold that barbell, you could do a goblet squat. There's also like front squat variations, which I'll cover in a different video, because I want to just focus more so on just like your basic, nice, easy squat techniques. And then lastly, so if you aren't able to get low without like the buckling or You don't feel confident in your ability to just squat down without falling forward or falling backwards. Training clients, this was always like a big issue, is they just felt very unbalanced. You can always start with a box or a bench, something to actually squat physically onto. So almost like you're sitting down into a chair. And then this just allows for a cue to actually feel. So you can do a touch and go, which is you just come down, your butt just touches that, and then you come back up. Or you can do a completely sit down and then come back up. Either one is fine for starting. I like to kind of play with both. And there are times where even lifting heavy, I will still incorporate the box squat, because then it allows me to just have a cue as to my depth and allows me to just drive up from like a dead stop position. So I will allow myself to just sit all the way down and then power through the exercise. So this is a nice tool even for advanced lifters, but for beginners, this is probably going to be the best starting point, just to kind of understand the mechanics of what you're actually doing. And then you can progress to a body weight, and then you can progress to a barbell or a kettlebell. But start slow, focus on the cues.
If you don't have a bench, you can use your dining room chair, your kitchen chair, the edge of your couch. There's literally no one that doesn't have something that they can use for a box squat.
Yeah. So just find like a nice depth. This bench is honestly, it's a little bit high for me. So I find I'm not actually hitting at least 90 degrees, which I don't like. But at the same time, still a great tool, especially for beginners. Chances are their mobility isn't going to be there yet anyway. So it's a nice way to just progress them slowly and get used to it still. But that is just a few tips and tricks for the squat. Hopefully you find this helpful. If you have any suggestions for other exercises you'd like me to kind of break down, please leave a comment down below. Give it a like, subscribe, and until next time, peace.